Language allowing Governor Hochul to close up to 5 more state prisons survives budget negotiations. Now communities will be on edge, waiting to see what happens next. According to the governor's office, the preliminary budget agreement announced by the governor yesterday includes Hochul's proposal to allow the state to close up to 5 more prisons with 90 days notice to, quote, increase the operational efficiency of the correctional system, end quote. There was hope the language would end up being excluded from the agreement. After the state assembly presented its budget plan and took prison closures off the table, the Senate, though, kept closures in its plan. Cape Vincent, Ogdensburg, and Gouverneur each have a state prison in the North Country. Watertown and a second prison in Ogdensburg have already fallen to previous state budgets, which allowed for state prisons to be shuttered.